Ryan Bowen has a problem. His problem now is that his shoulder is hanging on by a few threads, and he seems to keep pushing those last few threads to their limits. So let's take a look at his recent diagnoses and what it means for arm wrestlers to learn from and make an assessment for more ideal repair moving forwards. Initially, Ryan reported ongoing pain and discomfort, particularly around the bicep tendon at the shoulder, and it noticeably shifting in and out of its groove, limited overhead range of motion, and general weakness around the shoulder, with the impact being an impeded ability to exert side pressure on the table. So he went for an ultrasound, where the radiographer noted that the bicep tendon was still fully attached, but surrounded by fluid, suggesting some kind of inflammation, as he said he felt. In 2020, he said he had a similar issue, so this could be an ongoing condition that hasn't been resolved. On top of that, the initial ultrasound indicated a possible tear in the subscapularis muscle, one of the shoulder muscles responsible for internal rotation at the humerus, which again aligned with his own report of trouble with side pressure weakness. So after this, he had to go and get an MRI scan for a more detailed assessment. This MRI confirmed that the bicep tendon is still in its normal position, but surrounded by a significant amount of fluid, indicating a bicipital effusion, meaning severe inflammation, involving increased fluid content within the sheath surrounding the tendon, which could be from arthritis, overuse, or acute damage. In Ryan's case, this is probably either overuse or from the trapping of the bicep tendon in the shoulder during externally rotated pulling. As well as this, the 2/3 tear that was suspected in the subscapularis muscle initially is actually in the tendon of that muscle, connecting it to the humerus bone, and quite a significant tear at 7 by 12 millimeters, leaving only a few fibers keeping the muscle attached to the bone. As well as both of these, Ryan has reported bursitis with impingement at the shoulder, so a swelling of the bursae around the humeral head and shoulder joint, a buildup of fluid within the shoulder joint, and signs of Hill-Sachs lesions at the humeral head, which is usually when the shoulder becomes dislocated and the relatively soft head of the humerus impacts into the shoulder socket forcefully and flattens down or creates fractures across the surface of the humeral head. In Ryan's case, he has not dislocated his shoulder, but this could be from many other things, possibly directly from arm wrestling with an externally rotated arm where the bone is forced against the shoulder socket, or it could be from his abnormal upper back anatomy, which seems to have him constantly hunched over with rounded, internally rotated shoulders, which may cause the humerus again to constantly be pressed against the edge of the socket. Or it could be that combined with arm wrestling, or it could be something else. So these are quite serious and probably chronic injuries that have worsened over time, hampered by Ryan continuing to train as normal despite them. He says that pressing motions seem to worsen the pain, which makes sense if the issue seems to be related to the top of the humerus being pressed into the socket forcibly, while exercises that separate the socket, like pull-ups and rows, seem to be without pain. Ryan has started using peptides TB500 and BPC157 on his own, as he thinks he had success with TB500 on previous injuries, and despite his doctor advising to avoid training entirely, Ryan plans to continue training and arm wrestling with caution, intending to compete on that arm in the near future. So, to wrap all that up, Ryan's shoulder injury is quite a bit more significant than he initially thought, with a large tear in the tendon of the subscapularis muscle and a large amount of damage around the head of the humerus and shoulder joint. So, what does this actually mean for arm wrestling? Basically, for the time being, Ryan needs to avoid anything that involves side pressure, specifically anything that takes his hand or his wrist outside of his shoulder, or external rotation of the humerus. What seems to be the driving problem is that external rotation combined with pushing bone against bone in the shoulder, which is exactly what we see in a lot of his training and matches. Rather than staying inside or predominantly with back pressure, a lot of his table time seems to focus around pushing the torso down and to the side, with the wrist trailing behind his shoulder And then he finds a sticking point, which is most likely the point where bones press against other bones and provides an extra degree of resistance, with the downside of damage to the structure and the threat of dislocation at the shoulder, much like the so-called bone lock at the elbow in the King's move, which often seems to lead to bone spurs at the elbow where bone wears against bone. Since the issue seems to be largely the elbow travelling too far outside of the centre, it might be beneficial for the time being, if Ryan wants to continue training on the table, for him to adopt what some people use, a belt wrapped around the torso and arm, keeping it pinned to the side, and finding training partners who are going to respect his injury and reduce how far they push him to the side, and in general being more careful to keep his elbow tight and inside his shoulder. In training exercises, as he said, pressing movements which apply a compacting load down the bone into the shoulder joint are probably best avoided for the time being. Things like the bench press, overhead press, dips, or exercises in which the load pulls the arm externally against the shoulder, like flies, possibly shoulder raises, and also probably exercises like the ones he has done specifically for arm wrestling, that include the arm being pulled externally under load, like cable side pressure or dumbbell curls with the arm moving outwards with the load, should either be carefully done or avoided entirely. Really, in training, this would probably be a great time to start spamming back pressure type exercises and table sparring, like hammer curls, or to be even safer, preacher hammer curls, although not jamming the pad under the shoulder and pressing the head of the humerus into the socket should be avoided too. Exercises like rows, especially chest-supported rows in Ryan's case, will be very beneficial, especially if done with a full range of motion, allowing the weight to pull against the shoulder joint to try and reduce the pressure within it. And one of the elephants in the room is that Ryan has often gotten criticized for his posture, which is quite hunched forward at the shoulders, pushing them into constant internal rotation while constantly pushing the inside of the humeral head against the front of the joint. Ryan has said that he suffers from scoliosis and/or kyphosis. Kyphosis here is the one of these most important, since it is an excessive rounding of the upper back, which can lead to the problems we just mentioned. That in itself could be the cause or a contributing factor to his current shoulder issues. In Ryan's case, we don't know if the kyphotic posture is an actual structural problem or a poor posture and adopted position from lifestyle and training. Obviously, he would need to get an assessment by an actual doctor, but generally if he is able to simply straighten his back voluntarily, the problem is more to do with posture and imbalances than real structural issues. In his early videos from 11 years ago, some degree of rounded shoulders are still present, which means that for the past 11 years, he has continued to train in ways that probably make the issue worse, especially spending a lot of time rounded forwards at the table. So in summary, Ryan has some quite severe problems with his shoulder and should refrain from training in ways that put pressure on that shoulder. If he wants to continue training, then he should aim at more back pressure style training on and off the table, with an emphasis on upper back strength and mobility to try and counteract the internal pressure that is building across his shoulders. The tear in his subscapularis tendon is severe and will not heal magically, and it is unlikely that injecting peptides like TB500 and BPC157 are going to magically fix the problems, although they may assist the process, ensuring the recovery is healthy and strong, with these two peptides helping to reduce inflammation, oxidative stress, and possibly increasing the formation of new blood vessels in the tissue, helping it to be more functional if and when it has recovered. One of the other problems is that Ryan is currently in what seems to be a large calorie deficit given his weight loss. This may prevent repair of the tissue from happening either as quickly or as thoroughly as he would ideally want due to the lack of energy and nutrients available for the job, so it would probably be beneficial to either remove the deficit or to ensure it isn't too severe. As for his upcoming match with Sharkovic, I don't think it's a particularly smart move, especially with Ryan announcing all of this information to the public, particularly him lacking the ability to commit to side pressure. If this is true and Andre wants a secure win, potentially all he needs to do is push to the side until Ryan can't do anything, which puts his current injuries at even greater risk, potentially of a complete separation of the subscapularis from the bone, which will effectively end his career on that arm for at least the time being. Could he survive this match without further injury? Yes, certainly, but the risk is there. And the result that risk invites is going to jeopardize his entire career on that arm, so it needs to be sensibly considered. Presumably, if he is consulting medical professionals, then things like physical therapy have been suggested for him to work on recovering from the current state, but trying to do that with a completely separated muscle is going to be much more difficult than one which is still hanging on by a few threads. Caution, then, should really be the driving emphasis in his training and competing from here on out. Obviously, it's tempting and very easy to slip into full force training and table time, but if what he reported here is true, then Ryan and any training or gym partners need to really respect that his current position is on the verge of becoming a real catastrophe, and avoid ego-driven actions in pursuit of the greater goal of recovery. And that's it. There's nothing particularly new or unknown, but it's useful as a case study to see what factors are at play, and potentially provide information that other arm wrestlers can use for their own training and injuries. If you want more content like this, then make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.